Alright folks, let's get down here and we're going to go ahead and adjust our valve train. Make sure we got the right clearances. And so, you need to get this little timing cover off. Or just fall off, it's fine. And this cover is going to be going away as we have a nice little hole down the bottom of it. So what I'm going to do here is the old-fashioned method of adjusting valves. The service manual is going to tell you to set the motor on top dead center, and then probably have 3 or so different rotation points where you reset the engine to have your camshaft in the right place to check your valve clearance. But what you're doing with all that is simply making sure that the cam lobe is on basically your flat side of cam where it's not pushing out. So as long as your cam lobe is pretty much like this one where it's pointed straight away, you're in your point where you can set your valve adjustment. So you can pretty well go through here and rotate this a few times to where you have certain valves that are not on actual cam lobe itself, and then you can go ahead and check your clearances, which on our intake from what I've read should be between 0.10 0.15 millimeter ish. And the exhaust should be 0.17 0.22 millimeter according to what I saw online, and closest feeler gauges I have for that range are going to be 0.10 0.15 and 0.17 0.22. I believe like your exhaust is recommending 0.18 to 0.23, so you're right there in that range where you need to be at. So end of the day, you just don't want your valves to be touched, or you don't want your valves to be partially open when they're not supposed to be. Because if your valves are too tight, it will cause the bike to not run correctly, and a lot of times you will have issues with bike trying to stall on you when you're coming up to a stop and whatnot. That can be a common indication of valves being out of adjustment and usually too tight, which the reason why your tightness can change is basically the more wear you put on this engine, the more the valves will seat themselves into the cylinder head, and this will tighten up your clearances between your rocker and your top of your valve. So the more it breaks in, basically the more it tightens up. So you just have to go in and give it a little more room to operate. I believe should be working with 8 millimeter here. Yes. So like this one currently check. This one valve's not too bad, but this one here is pretty sloppy. So now we're gonna loosen up our adjusters and try to tighten that down a little bit. So just take this little nut loose. Do that on both sides. So now that's loose, make sure we can turn that. Get our feeler gauge back in here. And now we're basically just gonna snug this up. You don't want too tight, don't want too loose. You just want this feeler gauge to be able to slide, basically. There is a special tool for this, which I do not have. So we're just using pliers, but right now I tie it down too far. I can't get my feeler gauge out, so it's too tight. So now we back this off a smidge. You want to get it right where that feeler gauge has a small amount of drag to it, but it's not tight. You can still move it in and out. But that's right there where you need to be at. So now what you gotta do is basically hold that thought tighten this nut back down. Now you got it all set. I want to check it again to make sure it didn't move on you. So we're still good there. Make sure we're nice and tight. Not a whole lot of torque, but enough to keep it from coming loose on you. And now you should be able to slip that in there. Just a little bit of drag, not too much. And that should be right on the money right there. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. Might need to get me a smaller pair of pliers. That right there is just like a very partial turn is all it needs. Snug it down. And there you go, you got 2 valves done. A little drag, not too much. And now what you can do is kind of skip around whichever cams you can check that aren't pushing down on anything. So like this one over here appears to be rotated out of the way. This is our exhaust, so we're gonna go to our thicker gauge, and that's got quite a bit of slop to it. Well, one's pretty good. This one, smidge loose. So same thing. Let's pop that loose. Give it a partial turn. A little too much, actually. Snap that down a little bit. Make sure you're still right there. Might need to loosen this one a little smidge. One's off the cam. Loose on the money. I believe a service interval for valve adjustments on this is like 3,000 miles or something really short. So probably never really got done as with most bikes. Valve's usually something that'll scare most people away from doing on their regular maintenance. Anything involves getting into the motor, really. Alright, so we got those done. Now we're going to rotate this about 180. So now we have cam lobes that are in totally different positions. Yeah, probably spun this about 180. So now we've done that. Go through, check our other valves. Loose as hell right there. Normal there. Another thing I'm doing too, like this one, I didn't use the pliers at all to rotate this or hold it when I locked it down. So I basically over adjusted it to compensate for the little bit it moves when I go to tighten it back up. So I got roughly ballpark, and then by the time I give it that little snug, Gets it right where it needs to be. Good there. Good there. Okay. Good, good. Don't remember if I checked this one, but it might be on the cam on this. So let's just rotate this a little more and double check it. So now we're for sure off the cam. Okay. Good there, good there. I do believe I have all of them. Now we're just going to make sure I'm tying up all my nuts. Okay. Now just be sure I'm going to rotate this again and do some random checks just to make sure nothing moved on us. We should be in good shape now. You can call it done. Button this thing up.